We're unmuted and started. We're gonna call the meeting to order at 8:32. 8:30. Would anyone like to approve the agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second. Any discussion on the agenda? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carries. How about the minutes of September 10th? Anybody check them out?
Move to approve the minutes of the September 10th meeting.
Second. Any discussion on the minutes? I'd only make a note that they were very professionally done, and I was impressed with them.
That's very nice.
If there's no discussion on the minutes, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carries. Anyone has any conflicts, just bring them up when we start talking about it, or if we're voting on something, you have a conflict. Are there any public comments?
So, Mr. Chair, Mike Pritchard, I didn't have the computer up and operating. I'm in the next room. I have two comments I'd like to make, and I did make one of them to Chad, and I know he's under a lot of pressure, but getting a pack of materials that just prior to a meeting is not conducive to having a chance to look them over and become somewhat familiar with them. And I don't know if Chad was working last night till midnight or whatever, but I really think we have to have a rule about getting meeting materials out ahead of the meeting so supervisors have a chance to look them over before the meeting. And the second comment is, again, with respect to the minutes, this one I make repeatedly, is that they are often in many ways so sketchy that you have no idea what was discussed, et cetera, et cetera. And I think for the reasons of being able to look back and see what transpired at the meeting, that we need more detail in the minutes. And those are two comments I would make as a member of the public and as a member of the committee.
Thank you. Are there any supervisors here that aren't seated as committee members? Not. Are there any announcements? Any committee information we need to receive?
I'd just say that I think some of you heard, we did receive not our final check, but a check for $631,000 from FEMA to pay off parts or to reimbursement from last year's storm. So it's a tribute to Chad and Lisa McMahon and the people who have worked very hard to submit the applications and transfer them. So that helps tremendously. Yeah, come on in.
Anyone have any announcements or committee information? All right, is the Library Planning Services Committee here? We're looking for a presentation and some discussion.
I thought that was scratched from the agenda.
Oh, maybe I'm on the wrong one. I need to be on the second.
Yes, sir. It's
Yeah,
actually,
that's correct.
actually the museum.
All right, how about the broadband?
This one, we actually have a meeting.
We do have the museum.
Oh,
now.
the other agenda. All right, how about the Museum and the Historical Society? Well, the presentation.
There you go.
I think this slide.
Yeah.
Interesting times when you're going to walk into a bank with a mask on. My name is Tom Magnifici. I'm on the board of directors for the Polk County Historical Society, along with my volunteer friends over here. We're here this morning because we're asking for your help. I would imagine everybody in here has been to the museum, correct? If not, this is our building. It's in downtown Balsam Lake. Okay. The building was actually built in 1899 as a courthouse for Polk County. It's on the National Register of Historic Buildings. So it's, at some point in time, the people on the county board decided this building was worth saving. And in 1976, they turned it over to the Historical Society to make a museum. I don't know if you're aware of it, but we are the second largest museum in the state of Wisconsin outside the museum in Madison. We have the largest collection after the State Museum. We have a collection larger than Minneapolis, not Minneapolis, Milwaukee, Green Bay, and the other ones. For example, in our museum, we have a coat from the Revolutionary War. It's in excess of 240 years old. We have a piece of the battleship Maine that was sunk in Havana Harbor during the Spanish-American War. We have a wonderful collection of Native American artifacts that include an 1880s birch bark canoe that was found abandoned on Lake Wappagassett. Our oldest artifact are bison bones found in the marrow pits down by Nye, and they're in excess of 12,500 years old. They were actually on loan to the state from about 1923 till about 1965 when we got them back in our museum. We represent in our museum the logging industry, farming, manufacturing, education with a one-room schoolhouse located in Balsam Lake. We represent all the wars that we've been in, peace. We represent the hunting and fishing industry. We represent the government. We represent everything in between, and if we don't have it, there's a good chance that someday somebody's going to give it to us. What we do is, we're the history of everybody in this room's mother, father, great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather, anybody who lived in this county and developed this county to what it is today. I see if there was going to be a sign at the edge of our county, it should probably read, "Welcome to Polk County, the place where memories are made." I say that because people come here from all over the world to fish, to hunt, to water ski. We represent the lake life. We represent small town communities. If you look at our county, the largest town we have is under 3,000 people. It's kind of a nice way of life. What do we need from you? Well, I should also say, if we had another sign out front, would say Polk County, birthplace of cow cross-country skiing. It originated in Polk County. What do we need from you? Like everyone else, we need some money. We need a lot of money? No, not a lot of money. What we need is help. We need help from the economic development people so that we can partner with them and the tourism people, get people to spend more time at our museum, to find out more about Polk County. The worst thing that would happen is maybe somebody wants to relocate here, wants to move a business here, wants to build a vacation home here, and enhance the county's atmosphere. If you stop and you say, what can you envision with this museum? It's such a beautiful building, it's such a beautiful location. I envision down the road having an antique boat show. We have 549 lakes in this county. I can tell you some people who have 10 and 11 antique boats dating all the way back to the 30s. If you go over to Minocqua, Wisconsin, they have the largest antique boat show in the state of Wisconsin. On one weekend, they draw 25,000 people. That's 25,000 people. If we get them to stay in the county, spend money in the county, look around the county, maybe some of them decide they want to relocate here. You could have an antique snowmobile in here. One of the things that we have going for us, people don't realize, is we have Polaris Industries in our county. Polaris Industries has a payroll in excess of $20 million in this county. I go every other year to a place out in the Baja, where Nevada, California, and the Baja come together, go dune bugging. Okay? It's sponsored by Polaris. On that weekend, Polaris donates over $250,000 worth of parts to people who bring their dune buggies there. They bring their mechanics, their research and development people. If you got a problem with the machine, you pull it up and they fix it. We could do the same thing here with a snowmobile run. I'm sure if they're willing to spend money in the Baja where there's nobody, they're willing to spend money here. When I first moved here 20-some years ago, one night I went to Unity High School. I went there because they said they were having an antique sleigh ride. There were 15 antique sleigh rides, from one-horse open sleighs to one that would hold 22 people that night. On a moonlight night in the snow, people were drinking hot chocolate. They were roasting marshmallows. Kids were going for sleigh rides. We could do that around the courthouse down to the lake and here. At the same time, we could get one of our high schools to provide a choir. With the stuff that we have in our museum, we could put them in period costumes, having sing them a Christmas carol. Anything that will bring people to Polk County and represent our county. What we really need is a full-time director. Everything in that museum right now is being done by volunteers. It's not that we don't mind volunteering. If the museum is to grow and to be viable, it needs a full-time director. Why? We need someone who can write grants for us. At the present time, there is a $5 million fund sponsored by the state to help museums and us like us. The grant date is due the 30th of this month. If we try to get money, we're going to have to figure out how do we get the time to write a grant and how do we get the money from the state. The other thing that we need to do with a full-time person, we need to be a clearinghouse for all the people who live here. We get in excess of 200 requests a year for family histories from all over the country. They call up and say, I want to get history on my great-grandfather or pictures of the farm or whatever. We have to find a volunteer to go down, go through the place, research everything, find it. It could take months before we get back to the people. With a full-time on-site director, we could do that, plus the fact that we could charge for it. There's another revenue stream coming in to help finance the museum. In 2019, we decided we're going to go on a venture to start raising more money for the thing. We sponsored a dinner to honor the history of supper clubs in Wisconsin. That night, we raised $11,000 for the museum. This year, we were on track to honor the people who served in World War II from our county. We sold in excess of 300 tickets for a dinner. We hired a 16-piece swing band from the city. We sold 25 tables to corporate sponsors. If we would have done this on June 7th, we would have raised $25,000 that night. Of course, the COVID virus hit, so we're all sitting around in masks. The 4 people that we're going to honor from our county, one from the Marine, the Army, Air Force, and Marines, are in their 80s, 90s. One was 100. We sure don't want to have them survive World War II and then give them coronavirus for the dinner. That got canceled. We're asking for you to work with us. We need to educate our children and our grandchildren and other people on the rich history of this county, of belonging to and being a part of something bigger than themselves. Basically, what we're asking you to do is to make memories with us. If we all share in the risk and we succeed, we'll all share in the reward. The county will benefit, the towns around it will benefit, the museum will benefit. We in this room, you, I, and these people over here, we're the stewards of the legacy of our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents. 50 years from now, your granddaughter, your grandson might be in that museum looking up and see that you were at this meeting today, because that'll be in that museum. I wish to thank you for all the past help we got from the county, through the highway department and the different agencies over the years to maintain the building, to make sure the heat was on, make sure the water pipes worked and whatever. We are greatly appreciative to everything you do for us. We're just asking you to let's see if we can combine tourism, economic development, and this museum and make Polk County a greater place to live. Thank you for your time.
Hello, my name is Greta Palmberg, and I'm the current president of the Polk County Historical Society. I want to just give you the lay of the land of where we operate right now and what we're doing. As we know, history lays the groundwork for a strong, resilient community. Since 1937, the Polk County Historical Society has collected and been the caretaker of Polk County history. Today, our organization is made up of an all-volunteer, 10-member board of directors, and our annual budget is $32,000, and it's financed by memberships, grants, donations, and our annual fundraiser. We are responsible for the Polk County Museum and the Lansdale School in Balsam Lake. The museum is open to the public 5 days a week from Memorial Day to Labor Day, averaging between 1,000 to 2,000 visitors each season. The Society presents historical programs and events for the community, youth, school, and local organization. In May, we have hundreds of fourth graders from local schools tour the museum to learn about local history. In the summer, we run 2 sessions of a pioneer school at the Lansdale School in Balsam Lake. Besides the tens of thousands of artifacts we maintain, the Society also maintains an active archive and library. We maintain many Polk County documents, such as the Polk County Board of Supervisors records and yearly statistics dating back to the late 1800s. This year, despite our closure during COVID, we have clocked more than 4,000 hours by the volunteers. In December, we launched a new website, which includes information about the museum and our county. It's received more than 4,000 views worldwide since December. We opened our museum virtually in March, sharing stories of Polk County history and highlighting our artifacts. We spent many hours this winter updating and remodeling all exhibits in the military room. Volunteers have cataloged artifacts in our computerized inventory and preserved documents in the archives. Weekly, we have answered questions about Polk County received on our email and through our website. Our committees have spent hours planning our 2020 museum that included high school presentations, a community World War II speaker event in collaboration with the Wisconsin Historical Society and other historical societies, and like Tom talked about, our fundraiser, which was to happen in June. Unfortunately, all of these activities were canceled due to COVID, but they will be part of our 2021 museum season. We've also, though, been very thankful for the Polk County's work in maintaining the building. I want to give special thanks to Mo Norby, Rod Polk, and their team who've done a great job this year. They've helped support installing new LCD lighting in the military room. We've worked on fixing a persistent roof leak. We also partnered and shared the expenses with the county this year for an upgrade security system, and we installed security cameras throughout the building. For 83 years, the Polk County Historical Society has depended on volunteers to do this important work. It wasn't until 2002 that the Society had its first paid part-time director to work with an all-volunteer staff. It has never had more than just part-time staff. We currently receive $8,500 for salary from the county. Our part-time director retired a year ago, and we placed ads and sought qualified candidates. But hiring an administrative director with a non-competitive salary for a part-time position is nearly impossible. With the lack of applicants and the COVID beginning in March, the board decided to hold off on hiring a director due to the financial uncertainty of this year. We realize that a part-time director with an all-volunteer staff is not a model that we can continue to build this organization into the tourist attraction and community center it should be. Nor will that staffing allow us to grow, expand, or have the possibility of opening year-round. That's why we feel it's imperative to be able to hire a full-time director. But funding for this position is not possible with our current funding sources. It's neither feasible nor sustainable over the long haul. Grants, especially in the arts and humanities, are becoming more competitive, especially during these times. Also, the grants almost always exclude salaries and staffing. The donors are much more willing to support a project than operating costs. So that's why we're here today, asking you to partner with us in a growing premier tourist destination for the asset of the community, knowing that we can work together and seek financial support for a full-time director to make this goal a reality. I'm just going to let Bernie Damaris tell you just a little bit more about our vision for the future.
Okay, we'll make this very quick. Bernie Damaris from Osceola. Those two people are the reason I'm on the board of the Historical Society. I'm a history buff. I own an old building in the village of Osceola. I love this community. I'm a relative newcomer, having moved from the Twin Cities. And I want to be just a little more specific about what we're looking for. I've had a pretty good career, last leg of it with Target Corporation, helping them to spend their money more wisely. I think that's a skill set that the county could use. And if we partner together, I think there's plenty of opportunity for us to work towards spending money wisely if we believe that the National Historic Register and the building that we own and need to care for is something we want to continue to invest in. So I'm here to be the person that'll roll up his sleeves, literally, and help you figure out how we're going to fund this. We know of some funding that you currently provide. We want to be able to work in partnership to figure out how we keep the building going. As Greta put so eloquently, there's a lot of us to look forward to, but it's not sustainable in the current situation. So we're going to need to partner. And just to be a little more specific in terms of what we're looking for in terms of help. You've heard, again, it's really on-site leadership. On-site day-to-day operations has to be something we figure out to provide. We have a lot of valuable artifacts there that need to be taken care of. Security system is there, but we need to have on-site day-to-day operations. We talked about a full-time director with day-to-day operations. We're also looking for the function of information center. Right? We have an information center on Route 8, but if we're going to reinforce the fact that this is the county seat and the fact that we have a building here, we would also need to have that similar function out of the building that we operate in Balsam Lake. Again, we're looking to reestablish the museum, the courthouse, and the building that is so valuable to the community, reestablish it as the hub of the county with regard to the historical societies. Many of them have local, we have local support from the individual townships, villages with their own historical societies, but we need to partner together and leverage the hub that is here in the county seat, and we want to do that more effectively. That's just one way we want to get at using money more wisely across the county. Board liaison. The best way we can partner is to have a single point of contact from the board. I have no idea who that person would be or whether they would be from the board or from one of your groups, but we need a point of contact to work with and be able to communicate openly about what we think might be an opportunity for funding, and we've asked that you consider that, establishing that person. I would like to work with that person closely and be able to communicate effectively about what we see as potential opportunities. Again, this is looking at the library as an opportunity to enhance tourism and to enhance economic development. I've been doing an active
library or the museum?
I'm sorry, museum. Did I say library?
You're on that board too?
I get my projects. There's only so much memory there. With the museum, we see it as an opportunity to do economic development. I am on the economic development, Polk County Economic Development Board, and I've been an advocate for tourism in the village of Osceola because of my building and because of my community there. So there's a lot of opportunity, I think, for us to talk about how to do a better job across the county with those projects. Library, yeah, I'm not involved. I think that covers it. Actually, we wanted to give you all an opportunity to ask any questions of the three of us, but we're here to stay and we're here for the long haul. That's it. Thank you.
Anybody got questions, comments, discussion?
This is Mike Pritchard again. I had occasion to work with Greta on a program that the Polk County Historical Society was planning for this month to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. And I was delighted with the leadership that Greta showed on organizing that and moving it ahead. I will reiterate that I think our county Historical Society and Museum is a real jewel, sometimes maybe hidden to some people, but I'm going to recount an episode of several years ago when I had two of my then quite young grandchildren. We were going over to the to the museum, and I didn't know what their attention span might be. I think they were 3.5 and 5.5 years old at that time. And we probably spent 2.5 hours or whatever. They went through every corner of that museum, and they were squealing and delighted and finding new things. And it was one of the memorable days of my life to be there. And I think we've got a wonderful asset. And when we employ 500 people or however many in the county, I think a huge positive addition would be a full-time director at the Polk County Historical Society.
Mike?
Sure. I was just wondering if you envision this position as being a county employee or an employee of the society?
No, I didn't mean that, but I guess I'm equating it that it's doing a huge function for the county.
I think we're certainly for sustainability, would be excited to have an employee of the county because then all the funding that we raise could go right to the museum and all the programs that we do and all the archiving that needs to be done. So I think we would certainly be open to that, and that would be great.
So if I understand correctly, the position would be a county employee, and then the fundraising and the other sources of revenue that the society has would stay with the society to expand and promote and to take care of things there. Well, as somebody who does a lot of family genealogy, I'm kind of a nerd about that. Why, I really recognize the value, of having the society and promoting that.
Right now, we probably get on our email and our website 5 emails a week, and I would say at least 3 of those are for genealogy. They're all volunteer staff that are just running the place. We don't have enough of our volunteers to be able to help families the way that they should be in that research.
Just a follow-up question, if since you recently looked into hiring for a part-time position, through part of that, did you get any sense of what a full-time position wage would be or what a cost would be?
Yes, I think for this area, we're not in the Twin Cities, so for this area, we're looking at $46,000 and full-time. And the big thing for us is insurance for that person if it's a full-time.
The insurance component is all those non-negotiable. That's the part that everybody is looking for. And then the question is candidate and what you have to pay for a qualified candidate. That's a little more negotiable.
If we hired a full-time director and based on that thing, you're talking about paying them $20 per hour, which is, not exorbitant, but if we get the right qualified person, they can spend the time in there to archive and so forth. And the biggest part too is grant writing. There's lots of federal money and state money and foundation money that's available, but we don't have the people with the time and the resources to sit down and research it and so forth. And so that's a full-time director would help pay for a lot of that, so we can generate more income for the museum.
Chris?
This is Mike Pritchard again, and I would just,
Can
And Chris had asked to speak right away. We'll get right back to you. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, so, I've been hearing some chatter about this. That's why I asked for it to be put on the agenda. Of course, I'm one of those people in the community. I mean, obviously, my mother cares a lot about this stuff as far as I'm concerned. It's everything you can buy at a garage sale, but that's not really how I feel. It's just how I say it. So, we have some historical stuff. We obviously have to save it. I totally support their cause. 100%, and I know they need help. So my concern though would be is that, so let's just say the county would agree to fund a position, right? Is the county in a position to manage that specific kind of person? I mean, we already manage a lime quarry, doesn't work too well. We manage a recycling center, doesn't work so well. The Fair Society thing, we're kind of involved. It seems like all these things are outside the scope of government's job. We don't do very well at it. And the one concern I would have would be is that now we have to manage the right type of person that would work at a museum for $20 an hour. And then, a couple of years down the road, they're ready to move on. Well, now county's in the process. I would be more inclined to say, let's fund the position and fund what the insurance costs would be on top of that position and let the agency handle that whole thing. So if they want to make changes, it doesn't become a political issue in the county where we have an administrator or someone in HR or whatever. I mean, that would be my concern, is that we would take the role on of managing an employee, because then we would be managing that employee. But I have no problem funding an employee and funding the insurance. I support that. I know it's an asset to Polk County, and I think by telling some of us guys that think it's all garage sale stuff in there, I haven't been in there for 20 years. I know you're shaking your head, and I know it's not garage sale stuff, but my point is there's a lot of people out there like me that feel that way. So that's why I asked them to come and educate us, tell us what's in there, tell us how valuable it is, because when you hear your stories, how do you not want to support that? And we haven't had anyone here in 10 years telling us the story. I appreciate you guys coming. I appreciate everything you guys do. And I support that cause of funding a person and funding the insurance for it. I just have reservations of supporting it as an employee of Polk County. So that's my comment.
And you want to speak before Mike does again, or you got? Good. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I didn't clearly hear whether it was being proposed that the full-time director be an employee of the county. I was assuming it was going to be under the aegis of the County Historical Society Board. But my comment I was going to make before was by analogy to what I would say an approximate average salary for library directors is in the range of about $20 an hour. And so that sounds to me like that would be a reasonable amount to have to support a full-time position. And I would be willing to move that we ask that be included in the 2021 budget at a time when that might be appropriate to make such a motion.
Just as a side note, if you're talking about insurance and all, $46,000 in salary add insurance, you're talking about $73,000 roughly.
Yeah, and with the library, I'm not.
Point of order on that though, Mike, because we don't have on here action under this agenda item, so I don't know that we can take action today. Chair.
Okay, well, fine, okay.
I don't know if the motion would be out of order or not.
Yeah, I would call it out of order at this point. I mean, it's a presentation and a discussion. So however, a motion would be in order, maybe on our next agenda.
Sure.
Just something to keep in mind, being that we're putting the budget together, and this is like the first time that we've heard of this. And personally, I think we've got some ways to go before we start committing a person to this. I'm supportive of it. I've supported the museum for years, and I've been there and it's great. It's not garage sale stuff. It is cool stuff. But I think we need to see things like a business plan, a job description, and we need to do some analysis. And I don't think one presentation here is enough to say, let's make a motion to do this. I think an idea that comes to my mind is this has been a funky year because of COVID and everything shut down. But I know over the years, a lot of changes have been made with people and the way it operates and to the better. But I'd like to see kind of how this is going to operate going forward for a year. And then we can see how that's going to mesh with the county and what role we want to play. Because we do contribute quite a bit of money as it is, through the buildings and repairs and those things. So let's work together for a time to say what might this business plan look like. Because and this also sets a precedent, for other organizations. That's your decision, but that would be my suggestion.
Could we just, they're looking for a board liaison. Who would we appoint to be our point person to keep discussions going, to get the business plans, gather this information and continue to share with us? Would we ask the administrator to take it? Would we ask Mo? I mean, who would?
I think we would end up in that position too, just like we do with tourism and some of these other outside agencies. We would actually have an appointment and then have it confirmed by the board. A supervisor.
Liaison?
A supervisor, just like we sit on,
Okay. Yeah.
I'd say we'd pick a supervisor
Like
that would
the
want to
fair
do it,
board.
like the fair board does, or tourism does. We have
All right.
we have someone on that, or Arnell.
Would that be something that you would put on?
I could appoint somebody. I could reach out and talk to supervisors, see who would be interested and the right fit for the. And I'd like to keep it on the agenda then, because I'll have questions, when we get in that business plan. It'd be nice also to know the financial, create an MOU, whether we have one or not with them. We'd also like to see their financials of what their assets are, how much cash they have, what their expenditures are. So we'd like to see that whole thing together and, but it is budget season. So, clearly the administrator's job is to hold us back a little bit because we could spend money all day long and we don't always have it. So, but if we're going to need to get some additional funding or we're going to do anything, I think the more you bring us, we have another meeting in a couple of weeks, we can put you on the agenda again, the topic. I would support that. I'm sure the other supervisors would. How about we do that? Comment?
Yes, I just want to say that we already have a job description for a full-time director. We can bring you the business plan, we can bring you our financials. And the other point I wanted to make, we are affiliate with and have been with the Wisconsin Historical Society. So we talk about management and stuff. All of their education, all of their resources are there to support directors of historical societies across the state. So that's another asset we have to support the director.
Can I ask, does Balsam Lake Village provide support? And have they been?
Well, I think, for projects that we do around, like we just redid the garden. So they took away all of the brush. They gave us free mulch. We work with Balsam Lake and the counties. We do the Halloween for the local Balsam Lake community through Unity School, so we partner with them. Yeah, there is a partnership with them.
When you look at the building, and have a thing for old buildings, it's one of the most beautiful buildings around. Okay? Outside, I have volunteers lined up that this coming spring and fall. We can redo the whole landscaping around there. It's not going to cost the county a dime. We'll take out all the old dead trees. We'll replant all the flower beds. We'll put in a sprinkler system. no cost to the county, just because we want to improve the look of the building. The other thing too is it possible down the road, it would be nice to have a member of the county board sit on our board.
That's what we just said.
Yeah.
That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna
I don't
do
know
that.
a lot. So that would be a real plus for us too. But as far as the physical structure of the building, if you look at it, we have, over the years, they've replaced the aluminum doors and so forth. I've already talked to people who are willing to finance redoing all the doors on the outside of that building in a period that fits the building. Because we want it to look back the way it was when it was first built in 1893. So there's a lot of things and a lot of people who are interested in this building. That when we decided we were going to do this thing for World War II, it amazed me that within 20 days, we sold every table at the event, and we sold out 300 tickets. So the other thing too is when you look at what you do, we have the old courthouse in there, and there's many more things. You could have some of your meetings down there, as opposed to up here. Go sit in the chairs that your ancestors sat in and see what they did. It would be kind of nice to do that. Anything that we can do to get
Talking about a
people
new
into that
boardroom,
building.
that's not a bad idea.
I spent a lot of time.
Just saying.
They've got a better air conditioner.
Not outside.
I just want to say, certainly that I support this, and I know that you understand that we just need to do our due diligence. It is quite a large increase in funding, and we need to be able to sell that and to the taxpayers and make sure that we're transparent and accountable in that type of increases also. It sounds like you're pretty well prepared to take that on, so I look forward to our next meeting and hearing more.
And I just follow up too, because, I think your presentation is very good today and getting in front of us. We have other agencies that we already fund. They come and tell us, they give us a piece of paper. They got this graph on here on how many people are involved. And I mean, there are other, and they seem like they touch everyone in Polk County and we fund them. And I don't think they do a good job personally. And, so to me, the better presentation you do, the more you educate us. If we're funding these other agencies with a sheet of paper and a 15-minute presentation once a year, I have no problem supporting doing this 100%.
And I know
So
that
just keep educating us is going to be key on what you guys do. But one thing too is try to be as brief as you can. Because we get bombarded with people that like to give speeches, and I would just appreciate if your next meeting is just short and sweet.
I'll try the question because I've never.
Sure.
No, as a person who's I'm hearing business plan, and I heard you say memorandum of understanding. Those are the two deliverables that we want to work toward. And as the person that would be doing the business plan, I want to assure you that it is for the money you spend, this is the return that we think you're going to get for your investment. Okay, that is how I operated. That is how I operated as that guy at Target that said, when you spend your money wisely, you are always looking for a return in actual dollars for what you're investing in. And I think by saying it's tourism and it is economic development, those are the kinds of things we should be talking about with this library. We can raise money because people love it. I'm sorry.
You got something with the library going on right now.
The museum can raise money to invest in the building. There's a lot of people who have a passion for history. That's why we're here. But it's not a business plan, right? And we can continue to ask people for money out of love for the history in the building. But we need a business plan that shows the investment.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
All right, if I'm on the right agenda, we should be on the broadband next.
That's not the right.
I'm not on the right one?
I think we were going to strike that at the meeting.
It's on the agenda, but we're going to strike it.
Yeah, we struck that.
Oh,
I'm
you already
sorry.
did?
Yeah. Because the people who are coming to speak, want to speak, aren't available today. It's kind of quick notice.
Did I see that on our next general government?
They'll be in our
meeting?
next.
All right, well, let's move right along to the draft budgets.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to combine your approval, number 11 and 13. I've combined into one presentation. the draft budgets and the outside funding. So what I did is, in looking at, and when we talk about the general government budgets, not just the departments within general government, but I also included all the independent departments, such as the DA's office and things like that, that kind of fall nowhere else to go through. What I did in this presentation is it starts off, we'll talk about the outside agencies, and then I did the noticeable differences that we're looking at as we craft this budget in those departments. So the parameters that we're operating under and the trends we're seeing are on page 1 here. We're operating under the premise that the ceilings we established for 2020 are the ceilings that we're going to keep for 2021. We asked department heads and division directors to operate with those parameters because 2021 is an odd year potentially economically, and we weren't sure what sales tax was going to do and things like that. Now, we got a report on sales tax last night that I've only had a chance to browse, forecast, and all that, so we'll see what that looks like. One of the goals is to identify efficiencies through operational changes or technology implementation, meaning can we do things better, and is there technology we can use to substitute for manpower or to provide better customer service. Keep the new initiatives aligned with the mission of Polk County and establish board priorities, and begin adapting the budget to a divisional mindset, meaning when we look at budgets, we look at the structure we put in place and adapting the budgets to that. Trends that have shown in this area of the budget, we have rising operational costs regarding information technology. This is due to a very large shift in the market in the past 5 to 8 years, and it's substantial now. That subscription or that software is no longer you buy a disk, put it in a computer, load it, and you got it till you want something new. Now it's SaaS, subscription, or software as a subscription, meaning you pay for the license for the software for the duration you use it. They provide all the patches and updates, but you don't have that option of just buying a disk and loading it anymore. Now you pay on a subscription basis annually. Where that is a fundamental shift is before we could look at software purchases as more of a capital item as we let it out. We don't really have to buy it next year unless the license is expired or it's not working for us anymore. Now we don't have a choice. This is how the market is and this is how they offer software. Kind of think of it like iTunes Music or Adobe Acrobat is that way now. You can't get it unless you subscribe to it. CJCC was a concern for us this year on the levy draw just because we weren't sure what the impact was going to be. CJCC is supposed to be self-funded, but we've been going through a redraft. I am very happy to say, as we'll see when we go through the slides and in your packets, the levy impact appears to be around $40,000 this year, which is significantly less than we thought. And we're redesigning. We're going out now for the new coordinator. So knock on wood, in a year, that new coordinator, we can bring on the additional grant funding. We can make that levy disappear. Last year, speaking frankly, the budget prepared by that department was not realistic, and Maggie was forced to rely on levy to fund it. It was an unknown amount. So I've just tried to identify what that funding will be this year, and we estimated around $40,000. All right, capital needs. We're going to review the IT and the building capital need budget. Both budgets, as we look at them, we've got a lot of deferred and, to be honest, in a lot of ways, neglected operational maintenance that's been done in those areas for years. And so the decision has to be made if we start keeping our stuff up so that we don't run into these huge costs that are popping up. All right. Funding of outside agency funding overview, and you see the asterisks on there. The next slide will point those out. But I did FY 2020 compared to 2021. See a slight drop in the fair. Museum, that's what we presently fund at. Now, I want to put a caveat in there. Facility maintenance falls within the buildings budget. So as with this year, I think Mo's got an $8,000 line for repair at the museum. So you're really looking at, it's about $29,000 this year for the museum. West Central Regional Planning, same. Tourism, 70 last year. We're evaluating 75 this year. West Cap, same. Economic Development was 65 last year. We're saying the sum this year, but there's a caveat to that one. So as we looked at fair funding, as you know, we still don't have an MOU worked out. We're still trying to figure out what's going on there. The administrator's evaluating reducing the fair funding by $9,000, which would be half the cost of the bleachers, which that would be up to the fair to come up with the other half. We'd pay half, they'd have to pay half of the bleacher rental, which is $18,000 a year. Tourism has requested an additional $5,000 for website development and update. Economic Development was allocated $20,000 in an additional funding request last year for a workforce marketing campaign. They weren't able to launch that campaign this year, so they're requesting that amount, their typical amount is $45,000. They're requesting that additional $20,000 be carried into next year. Yes, ma'am.
I think you just answered my question. I was just going to ask if that was a carryover or in addition.
It's a carryover, but I'm not going to show it on the budget or the books as that because we don't want carryover, so it'll be a reappropriation. It's an unspent, and we'll reappropriate it for the following year.
A quick question too. I mean, I know we're going to go, but typically any of these people that wanted additional funding would come in just like the Fair Society did. So is tourism going to show up and tell us? Because they've asked for this funding before for their website development and we've turned it down.
They dropped a request off a few days ago. We got the written request a few days
They're
ago.
supposed to give us typically they would give us a financial report. We would see everything. They'd do a presentation of why they want the money. And historically, we have not funded these unless they came in and actually did a presentation. So I just want to make that point.
Yeah, and I can recall as the EDC director, I always came once a year.
Yeah.
Much to your chagrin when you had to listen to my presentation, and I didn't get the request to come speak. Now I did from West Central Wisconsin. I did from I think Terry came in a couple of months ago and spoke. But the tourism for some reason didn't.
Who's our representative on tourism? Is there just one or two? Do you know who?
It's now Mr. Warrenthal.
Tourism?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, it's Mr. Demel.
Oh,
yeah.
Just point,
Yep.
We haven't approved funding if they haven't came in on general government. You're both new to general government, right? No, the rest of you've been here. But isn't that typically been the case that we got something in a kind of a presentation on why they needed it? But
Yeah, normally they do. I mean,
yeah,
they're asking for more money.
right.
That's only reasonable.
Do we want to,
I
do you want
propose,
us to reach out to tourism and ask them to present at the meeting on the 8th?
yeah, if you're going to ask us to approve anything that's additional funding to outside agencies, I'm going to vote against anything that doesn't have a presentation to it.
Okay.
Or a financial, because one year someone asked us for $5-10 grand and they had $100,000 of cash sitting in their account.
Right.
So it was like, why are you asking us for money when you have plenty of money?
Yeah, we don't want to give them money to hold their fund balance with.
Right.
I think that's probably more of a factor in 2021 with what happened in 2020 with the whole COVID. Where did those resources go? Did they use them? Did they shut them down? Where did they go? And I think it's important right now that we at least review that. Because there were a lot of things that got.
Right. And that's like the EDC that said we can't spend it. And he came and asked, he said, should I ask for that invoice for this year? And I said, no, let's make the case if you need it next year.
Well, the next phase of this is discussing the highlights from each of those departments that we're evaluating. So the county clerk, I'm going to start there. For 2021, there's a reduction in assigned levy dollars, about 61,000 related to professional costs. What this comes from is the county clerk is cyclical in activity. For example, this year is a really, really busy year because of a presidential election, some special elections, things like that. Next year is what's called an off election because it's not midterm or presidential. Then the following year will be midterm, and then an off year, and then again. So you've got a $61,000 roughly reduction in levy for the off election cycle year. We're evaluating an increase of 0.45 FTE. Presently, the county clerk is staffed with the county clerk, one deputy full-time, and a 0.55 part-time person. If we raise this to a 1.0 FTE, it's approximate cost $35,000 to elevate that person to full-time and add in benefits. So, and I talked about starting to focus on divisional budgeting. One thing we're doing this year is allocating an easy step, or the first step, allocating the cost of the divisional directors. So I'm allocating 2.5% of my salary and fringes to the county clerk, to the support and, function I have down there. It is more minimal in the elected offices by far than it is other areas. But that's where an allocation is. Yes, ma'am.
Can I just make a comment that I'm real pleased to see the increase to that as a full-time position. I know the previous county clerk, was putting in a lot of time, and I don't want to see Lisa and her staff get burned out. I think there's plenty to do, even in off election years. Still, plenty of work to go around.
And as we evaluated that, the consideration that our levy cap is down this year because of professional services. And what happens, to clarify, in professional services, there's a lot of cost attached to hiring a company to program the voting machines. The more elections you have, the more machines you use, it's skyrocketing costs. So when you have fewer elections, fewer machines used, those costs go down drastically. And it, like I said, it's cyclical, so you have to anticipate those changes. It's a very specific ebb and flow if you look at an 8-year period.
I know in the clerk's office a couple years ago, they've been asking for that position for a few years. And I know we eliminated one of their services with DMV services they were doing, thinking, okay, that would take the load off them. But is it proper to ask the clerk that, is this your request?
Yeah.
Is your request? Yep. That's all you asked for, was just that?
That was the only additional funding request.
Anything else, Mr. Chair?
No, go ahead. Are you done?
Yeah, I'm going to the next. I just wanted to make sure. All right, treasurer, significant highlights. She's asking for no significant changes other than 2.5% of my FTE will be allocated to the treasurer's office. So, again, the support that divisionally you provide. CJCC, significant highlights. Allocation of 0.05 FTE of my salary and fringes to CJCC because there is a little more participation from my position with the CJCC than there is the elected offices. We are seeing an increase in TAG grant funding by approximately $100,000 from roughly 66 to I think 169. That's good news. That makes up for that levy draw that I was afraid we were going to have. Because initially I thought the levy draw would be approaching 150. Charges for public service. This has been a good thing. These are the charges that people pay to participate in the program, the victim impact panels, the treatment court. Those are nearly double what they were anticipated budget for. You look at the 2019 actuals and 2020 year-to-dates. So again, that's another way the CJCC is moving to support itself. So that helped reduce the levy draw. So when I say reallocate 2 FTEs from CSD to CJCC, that's merely where they're housed. The CJCC has 3 employee positions, a coordinator, a TAD counselor and the drug court counselor. Just on paper, the drug court counselor and the TAD counselor have been housed in CSD. It's just shifting them under CSD. So it's not any effect on FTE count, it's just a movement on paper. And as I said, the estimated impact levy right now appears to be around 40,000 for next year for CJCC.
Additional 40,000?
No, so we don't have sufficient grant funding to fully support the CJCC. And I realize that's how it was originally pitched. That never came to fruition. We have raised the grant funding this year. We got more. We knew the CJCC was going to have a draw. We've got it down to 40,000. No promises, but I'm hoping with the right coordinator, we head in the right direction over the next year with this new business plan and this massive redesign we've gone through, that we can make up that 40,000 in outside funding.
What, who's in charge of CJCC then? I mean, what do you, clearly it hasn't really worked very well. It doesn't seem like to the public. It seems like what's the benefit and what is it doing for our community?
So now the CJCC coordinator and staff report to me. They're moved under me.
Who are they?
You've got Sharon Foss and Julie Prekrifka as our counselors. And then in the interim, we've had Don Wortham assisting from UW Extension at no cost as we redesign our business plan, our job descriptions, our programs, and rebuild those bonds. It's been a very busy year in a redesign.
So internally, I get it. What does it do for the public?
So for the public,
What's the benefit?
the benefit, recently we had a graduation from drug court. We have managed during COVID to keep roughly 14 people in drug court at all times. The maximum is 17 with drug court. TAD, quite frankly, the TAD program that was introduced last year has not been successful. We presently have 0 in TAD. We've got 1 prime candidate. We have beefed up first-time offender, meaning if this is their first arrest, they go through the classes, the programs, that's kicked off. The other thing that we're looking at doing, although I put the brakes on it till we get what we're doing right, is we have a DUI diversion program that there was some overlap between CJCC and CSD in what the provision was. We're trying to consolidate that for streamline efficiencies to offer that. CJCC for the next year is going to focus on the diversion program, which was approved last year, that position. We're going to focus on building that, the first-time offender program. We're going to focus on keeping drug court going. One thing that's been really beneficial there is that we've started programs at the jail. If you all recall, with the jail redesign and staffing, we were able to shift a person to the full-time programs. And that was no levy dollars. We've actually got GED classes going in the jail and stuff. That works closely with CJCC. One of the other things we did to the money side, Mr. Chair, is last year, or prior to recently, we paid an outside entity to conduct the drug testing. We're doing that in the jail now, and instead of those funds going to an outsider, they just transfer from the CJCC to the jail, which supports the jail programs. Have a 0 levy effect, plus we're keeping that income inside the county. So I believe that under this new business plan, under this redesign, under bringing the committee back together, and the other fundamental shift we've made that's important to note is the committee structure with CJCC now operates very much like the county board does. The executive committee meets 2 months in a row, and then we have a full committee meeting every 3rd month. The executive committee, for example, they look at the job description for coordinator. They look at the policy rewrites we've been doing.
Who's on the executive committee again? Who sits on that?
You've got Jay Luke from the board, the sheriff, the administrator, the district attorney, Nicole Strom from probation and parole. That may be,
Judge.
and Judge Anderson or Tolan. And so the committee looks at it, the committee kind of directs it, then we present to the full committee every 3 months.
I think it's important for some of the new board members to understand what you're doing over there.
And before, what we were doing is the full committee, which is about 25 voting members and some non-voting members would meet. And we kind of got mired down in discussions and differing views. So we've tried to streamline that process, modeling it after the county board's process. That seems to be helping some too.
If I could just add one thing I think the public is interested in. completed was we just changed the mission of the organization. It was one of coordinating and communicating with all aspects of the criminal justice system and rehab. Now it's more toward accountability and prevention. So it's a much more direct, and I think the executive committee and the board have a better understanding that we're not there just to collaborate, but rather we're there to show results. And then we'll start measuring those results going forward.
Human resources, the two significant highlights, allocation of 0.3, a third of my salary and fringes. And then $70,000 professional services for the cost of ECHO management training and performance review development. ECHO is a group that came in a few years ago and taught several county management staff. ECHO is the group that did the 360 analysis for the last administrator review. So that is a budgetary add to their professional services line, a one-year add.
Why do you feel like you need it?
Well, this was one of the priorities when I came in was how do we, one, make this the best place to work and serve, right? That's the vision. But what we had was every position that seemed that of import that we hired was hired through an outside search firm. We've got great people in this county. And so one of the things we wanted to do is start developing people as opposed to putting people in a position for one time and they stay there forever. So we wanted, that begins with coaching our management on how to stretch people, expand their skills, how to do performance appraisals in a way that's not just, hey, you're doing great, pay raise. So this is kind of just person management development, which will then lead to all employee development so that we continue to be more efficient and succession management gets filled with local people as opposed to always getting a search firm.
Chairman, my only comment about that, and that company, I mean, to be perfectly honest with everyone here, the reason we hired them is because no one had the wherewithal to get rid of our last county administrator that was doing such a bad job. So it's kind of like, oh, hey, let's hire someone to tell us what we really already know. And sometimes that's, not that I'm saying you guys pay a lot of money to professionals around here to know how to do this job, right? And to do the hard work. And to me, it's like, why are we paying a professional service company to come in? Same one we hired basically to get rid of the last guy because no one wanted to do the hard work. And I just have that same kind of feeling. It's like, why are we spending $70,000 when we have I look at our executive team and administration team, and I think, we have some very good people working for us. Why can't they do that job? Why are we hiring someone else to come in and tell them how to do it better? Is that what I'm reading?
So,
Am I reading this wrong?
It's not just that piece, it's also there's also a training piece in here. And I will say, over the course of my 25 years in government, I've been benefited by having a lot of external training. And sometimes training from an outside source cause self-realization that wouldn't occur otherwise. And I do think that there is benefit to bringing in trainers for staff and helping them develop. So I appreciate the confidence you have in us, but we could all always be better. And I think training is beneficial to people, and training is a big component of this.
You have to pay for it. We seem like we have so many connections with the rest of the state, all these agencies, we fund all these agencies, we participate in them, but you still have to go out to outside funding. I'm all on board on training.
Right.
I think that's a great thing, but I have a hard time spending $70,000 for more training, just personally, with what we already have for staff and payroll and support around the state to help. The county board needed training, and you guys brought us in training.
That was free.
Yeah, that was free.
How'd that work out?
Well, You think paying someone would have helped? I doubt it. You could pay $100,000 and I guarantee our vote last month would have been the same.
I guess, for me, it comes down to,
Sorry, guys.
We went,
oh, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
We
Brad
went-
was trying to speak to him, but somebody had talked.
We want to instill additional knowledge in our staff. We want to identify when we can do things better to serve the county better, to be more efficient. We want to breed not just better managers today, but the people coming up to be better managers as we age out. I think there's a lot of benefit in that. And I do think that if you only look internally to that training, then often what happens is you kind of keep doing things the same way all the time. And you never say that there might be another way to do it.
I get that.
Go ahead.
I think that there's value in having training provided with objective, independent, new set of eyes. The people who are receiving the training, I think, are often approach it.
I didn't mean to say that we shouldn't have training. It's the
Yeah, I
cost
understand.
and you didn't have, did you get budgets? Did you get 3 bids? Did you go out and research everyone you could get training from? Or did you just call this one company up and say, hey, let's plug in 70 grand into the budget so we got it covered? That's Fran more what I'm saying. I'm not fighting against
Sure.
training. So just want to make sure.
And I guess I'm just speaking to the value of training coming from an outside source, because sometimes I think when training is provided in-house, the people who are attending the training, when they're being trained by people they know, they bring something, maybe some preconceived notions or ideas to the training. There's kind of too, I've heard the 50-mile rule. You can have somebody who lives within 50 miles tell you something, and because it's somebody familiar that you know, it's not viewed as independently and as objectively as going for somebody who, is an outsider, and that's one benefit to having somebody outside come in. So
I support training. I just don't support spending 70 grand on it.
yeah, well, then I don't know what, if there's any request for proposals or, what the 70,000 includes, a breakdown of
So
what
this
that is.
project predates my time here, so I am going to ask Darlene to speak to this if you would.
This is the same company that we had, this thing off, that we brought in 2.5 years ago. And they worked with probably about 65 of our management team. Not just the top tier that you see a lot of, but those that are boots to the ground working directly with employees. And it was a great opportunity. We actually had, at that point, I believe we had 7 different sessions, and Mo was a part of that. So if I say anything wrong, feel free to jump in. But we had 7 different sessions, half-day sessions so that we could really concentrate. So half of the group would meet in one half of the day, the other in the other. We communicated the same way. We were helping our employees in the same way. Again, this session will catch up anyone that was unable to participate previously. So do some brief trainings with those to get them so they're talking the same language as the rest of us. And then continue to develop us so that we're good leaders. You have to understand one of your biggest costs that you have as a county board and as a county entity is our employees and our staff. And there's a lot of liability risk with all of that. All it takes is one manager saying something that he or she is not aware of how it's coming out and being presented, and it could become a liability issue for us, let alone what Vince was addressing. How do we continue to develop and build those folks so that we have new people that can come and work into our organization and develop up and float to the top. So that's what this would do. They're going to look at our job description so that we're more consistent with those across the board. You asked if we had
vetted to see if there were other organizations. We had previously, when we started with them, and I believe it was probably about 3 years ago. And we had really searched hard, and we built a great relationship. These are the kind of people that when you get on the phone, I get into a jam with some issues, I can ask them and they don't charge us. You know what I mean? Because yes, we're paying a fair amount of money, but we do build a great relationship with them. Do you have any questions about that? We can certainly share with you what kind of training this would involve, but it's to get consistency, fair management, reduce our liability risk, increase our succession planning, and help develop our teams.
It just seems like a lot of money to throw at the county board. And this is typically where I have struggles with and other supervisors have is sit down in a meeting like this and you just get a one sentence thing, hey, we're adding 70 grand for professional services with no previous like, hey, this is coming.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden we're here today and, personally, I'd rather give the museum the 70 grand than you guys the 70 grand. If I had to weigh it right now, they did a way better presentation on why they needed the 70 grand than what I got today. Just being honest, because we're the ones that are going to get asked when we leave the room, why did you give them 70 grand?
This is an investment really in 450 people who touch the citizens of the county.
And I wish you guys would do that without us having to ask and drill into this, but that's fine. I don't have a problem, as long as it's explained, but. Just as a heads up.
Did you have something?
Yes, I would suggest that we reach out to WITC. We as a company have participated in training just like this as an outside source. Obviously, I've got 30 years in and I understand that outside training is something important versus training internally. WITC did a wonderful job for us on a couple of different management training strategies, and it was considerably less money. And they're right here. So before I could support spending $70,000 without understanding what they're doing with this program, I'd like to understand what could be provided by WITC at a far reduced rate, plus they're right next door.
Support that.
I have a question. Does this include organizational analysis in the scope of their services?
And to what degree?
Well, you talked about them looking at job descriptions and things like that. Are they going to make recommendations?
Well, they won't, it's not going to be a structural analysis of,
Okay.
what they will do is alignment of, so that an administrative assistant here, their job description is aligned to an administrative assistant here and work up the tier that way. As far as an organizational behavior analysis and an organizational structural analysis, no, that does not include that.
They're basically a training consultant.
Correct.
I'm sorry, and trainers as well.
Yep.
Again, this would include, I'm trying to think in my head, and I apologize, 7 different training sessions for 65 different folks. So if you divide that, it's a little over $1,000 a person, divided by 7.
Does this organization or this company, do they specialize in municipal governmental?
They
Or
specialize.
are they private sector or?
They specialize in the discipline of, organizational training, employee training, behavioral analysis of, how we interact, those kinds of things.
You did do an excellent job on our 360 review process to our last administrator. I mean, they did a very good job of what they did.
And to that note, I would say that government is business in the sense that government is more aligned with business operating models. We strive to operate leaner. We strive to operate more efficiently. A lot of things like Lean Six Sigma, those kind of theories are now implemented in government. The divisional structure is an example of taking the business model and putting it into government. So there's a lot of cross-discipline that now goes on. I went through a very long leadership program at Northwestern, law enforcement leadership program. a lot of it was taught by business people because those things, translate. It's
I'll
become a
reach
business
out to
measure.
WITC. And having gone through a tremendous amount of training myself in different organizations, we want to make sure we do the right thing. If we're going to spend any money, let's make sure we get it so that it is broad enough and deep enough that we actually absorb it and it stays with us.
Right.
And so I'll review and use my discretion on that. But I just want you to know that the investment in our employees is a priority. It has to be, because if we don't, that's when we get into trouble. And before you know it, the standards start coming down. People get locked in a position, say, I've been doing this now for 25 years. I've always done it this way. You ask them to change, and it's like, that's not what I do.
So do you,
We're trying to develop people.
So do you guys do, I mean, you must do ongoing training, right? This is the one-time 1-year thing, right, you're asking for?
Right.
And it's gonna be used up in 2021.
Correct.
We actually started to do it last year when I first came on, and we were going to pay for it out of my contingency fund. But we put it in the budget this year because it got delayed. Let's put it out there.
And a lot of this, Mr. Chair, is providing the managers the tools in order to enhance the in-house training we can do. If you don't give them the tools in their toolbox, then
And that's where I'm thinking, so you do it once a year, is this something that Darlene, you said, you haven't done it for a few years, what do you wait 4 or 5 years and you got new people do it again, or? Is
That's
it
what
something,
we want to build a structure so that we aren't doing a continual,
should be funded every year, some training?
should not have to be to this extent.
and one thing we will work to do, Mr. Chair, is identify the areas that, once given the tools, we can train in-house on. There will always be value, in my opinion, though, of bringing in external trainers. But it's often a blend, and now the blend becomes online as well. So there are efficiencies to be achieved, but you got to have foundational work to do it.
It's just, I just don't want to see a one-size-fits-all approach. I guess I would like to see somebody that, they are aware of the uniqueness and constraints that government has, that private sector does not.
And that is the benefit of using an organization that we've used before when they're already familiar with operations.
Just don't bring a local contractor in for training. Guarantee you that won't work.
You throw a brick at them.
Note if I may, the original training we had with Echo was very instrumental in my team, basically, because as the training dove down into how you work with others, how you train others, how you supervise others, it dove down into naturally the disc profiles of people and how they react. So if you knew you were an ID or more collaborative, or if you were more analytical, how do you approach that person? How do you supervise that person? And it really opened the eyes up to the mid-level management of the foreman and those first-line managers when they're talking to their crew, knowing how to give those assignments out and what are those key points to hit. So it was a very good training 3 years ago, which definitely would need refreshing to keep us on board.
I found generational training to be very valuable, getting to the point of being an old fart. Myself, I found it very beneficial to learn how to relate to millennials and younger people in the workplace and how to motivate them. So,
One last question I have. So currently, what do you have in your budget annually, Darlene, or Vince or whoever, for training? What do you guys allocate for training every year currently?
I don't know that we have an annual line item.
We don't have an annual line item. The other professional services for this past year, for example, was for the Chronos rollout of the new timekeeping system.
What I'll say is, my experience with these things are, in essence, you're training the trainer. When Mo and Darlene and Chad and I get trained on this type of thing, we start practicing it, and we're coaching our folks, that kind of stuff too. My reaction last year coming on board was, we don't have a performance management system that rises performance. If we have one that just say, thanks, you're doing your job. So we want to coach people on things like, what are you doing well? How can you improve? And then how do you follow up to make sure it happens? We don't do that, or those are the types of things we can raise the performance of our leaders, who will raise the performance of their staffs. We think will be more productive, happier, and will be able to develop people so that when one of us moves on to a new position, we internally have the people that are ready to take over.
And regarding that line item, Mr. Chair, at this point, I don't think I'd be comfortable putting a standing line item in until we clearly evaluate with this foundational work, what do we need to do on a continuing basis.
Each department has a training budget for auxiliary training, like hydraulic training, conference seminars, that type of things. But this is more county-wide training, as employee training.
Under administration training.
Correct.
Department of Administration. This again is an allocation. 0.3 of my salary fringes to Department of Administration. So we're evaluating the addition of one FTE front desk receptionist. Approximate cost of $45,000. So the person that's at the front desk right now, we brought on due to COVID, due to screening and those kinds of things. As you all will recall, or the new will not recall, and I apologize for that, a plan that the previous administrator had was to have a central reception point, greeting point, customer service point for customers as they came in. Right now, I'm funding that temporary worker out front through November 6th with the rest of recovery money related to COVID. But this position's been very well received by the public. It's been a help getting people places, being a point of contact for the public, especially at a very weird time like COVID. The ongoing idea would be that would then become a central reception desk. So all the phone calls, if you go to the website and the general information number rings to Lisa's office. So that desk would then become the central reception desk as well for the calls from the public. Hey, what time is the treasurer open? When are tax payments due? That position can also assist the clerk's office, the treasurer's office, and the register of deeds with customer service to the extent of if it's a repetitive form that the public wants when they come in, that can be at that desk and the person can say, this is the form you need, and then they can route it to them. It's more of a streamlining of services and increasing that customer efficiency long after the COVID screening process is gone. Right now, the funding runs out November 6th. I'll fund the remainder of the year from various lines within general government, but we're proposing making this a long-term position.
I think other counties, when you visit their centers, have like that.
45,000, that doesn't include the healthcare cost on top of that.
It does depend on where we grade that because that is a low-level grade. It's 45 to 55,000 depending on their elections because that's going to be a receptionist, a lower-level grade. So, it's limited scope of responsibility and that kind of thing.
You've asked for an additional, a half person in the clerk's office, but this person is going to be sharing some clerks. So the clerk's getting quite a bit more help, it sounds like.
We tried to figure out a way to create efficiencies downstairs with adding as little. We had an additional 0.3 in Department of Administration, and I've got a summary page at the end on the FTE count. And so that 0.3 absorbs part of that. So it's about a 1.25
I just know
increase.
the public is going to have problems with us adding a bunch of employees. So far, how many employees have you added to the county payroll today?
1.25 will be the sum total.
Of the total when we're all done with this budget?
Right now, for this group, 1.25. There's proposals from other departments that
What is the total amount of employees you're adding with the total departments?
we haven't gone through all that, but there's proposals for a recreation deputy. The law enforcement's put that forward. There's a proposal for.
But in this proposed budget that you're presenting today, how many employees have been added to the county payroll?
Right now, we're looking at about 2.5.
Just 2.5 employees to the total budget?
Right.
Okay,
And we're probably going to have some attrition,
sure.
and which will offset that. I'm hoping to keep it at 1.5.
That's probably saleable to the public.
Yeah, that is.
That's where, we've got some attrition that we believe is going to happen in other departments. I think our net is going to be around 1.5.
No problem with that.
I'm trying to keep our net very, very
If,
low.
if we do this, how much freedom comes out of Lisa's department, considering we're gonna add there too?
It will take, mainly what it will help Lisa with is two-pronged. Number one, the people that wander into the clerk's office because there's nobody else there. That helps all 3 elected offices in that regard. But I think the biggest benefit to the county clerk's office is if we have a central call reception point where that's the number they call. Now, here's the trade-off. Just so you know, those 3 elected offices just aren't getting a handout. The trade-off is you got one position where you got to figure they're off a couple weeks a year for vacation. You got to figure they're off sick a week a year. You got to figure they got a doctor's appointment. Then as I coordinate with those 3 offices, the trade-off is going to be when that desk is empty, I need somebody at that desk so that we've got a working thing. Because really, you can't add a position like that in new duties unless you have a backup for it. So that would be the trade-off for it. The other advantage I see for it operationally is during high times for like the treasurer's collections twice a year, when we have to bring in temporary workers and pay those, during high times during election cycles, things like that, we've got a person that we can grow and develop. They may not be able to do those specific duties, but maybe there's lesser duties they can pull off those offices as they refocus.
So do you foresee that ability with, by doing that, to reduce the amount of temporary we have to bring in?
Absolutely.
So there's an offset to that.
Absolutely. I think there's an offset plus the customer service curve.
I just want to comment that I'm surprised they can get any work done in your office if you have to answer the phone and you have to take care of everybody who wanders in there and you're interrupted all day long, every day. It's hard to get anything done. And then when
Oh,
you
you're just
do,
defending the clerk.
well, hey, I identify with it. I know
This
what
ain't the
it's
day we're
like.
nice. We're not supposed to be nice to everyone today, Fran.
I'll always advocate for the clerk's office and the treasurer's office.
Wonder why?
Well, because I've been there.
I know.
You know, and then when you are doing something, you get interrupted over and over again, and you come back to it, it leads to inaccuracy and mistakes as well, so.
Information technology. So here is one that operationally is going to cost us more because of the change in the market and the neglect that we've shown this department over many, many years. As everybody recalls, in 2018, we had a very negative security audit that led to some significant changes in it. With that, Scott has done a phenomenal job. One of the things I tasked him with was addressing that audit right away. And we funded a lot of the ongoing software costs for 2020 that were unbudgeted, working with the clerk's office. And here's an example of how general government works together. We took election securities money and were able not to only increase security for elections, but for the county as a whole. However, those softwares have ongoing continuing costs. Those didn't exist before. We have lots of spear phishing attacks constantly where employees are getting fake emails and that kind of stuff. Scott's done a wonderful job on the security side, but that software is not cheap, and he's really done a good job buttoning that up. That's an increased operating cost. Office 365 is a big initiative that we're evaluating. So Microsoft Office has expiring licenses. We're due for license renewal. For a 3-year license renewal for our group, it's a $385,000 spend that's due this year. An option that we're evaluating is Office 365. It's a software as a subscription package, but the annual cost is about $150,000 as opposed to $358,000 spread over 3 years, $160,000. But the other thing it does is it replaces WebEx, which we presently pay for to provide this to the public because that's in there. It provides a lot of security features that are allowing us to phase out about $40,000 of other software we pay for if we were to implement this. So But 365, this is what I was talking about, the change in the market. You go from buying Microsoft licenses every 3 years in this big batch purchase, you have an ongoing subscription as a service. The advantage to it is it does the security patches, it reduces the amount of technician time we have. We don't have staff going to each machine installing it. So there's a recurring cost for 365 to move to this, to address this, the Microsoft Office issue, the WebEx issue, the mail server that's ending. We have to buy a new mail server in 2021 because ours is expiring. This replaces that. It's included in the cost. However, in addition to the ongoing cost of the annual fee, there's a one-time estimated cost of $100,000 for implementation. That would be a fund balance expenditure. But that's to get the software up and running, to get the training for the employees in place, to work with our mail servers, install the virtual servers, all the stuff that comes in. What we would do is we would bring contractors in to assist our staff so that we don't grow the IT staff to get the Microsoft Office 365 in place. Once it's in place, we've got the facilities to manage it. It's just the implementation. It's a massive implementation. The thing to remember about 365 is it's completely scalable, unlike if we go buy licenses for a 3-year period. So we pay a monthly fee per employee, and we can scale it on the fly. So if we're, like right now during COVID, we've held back and have a lot of open positions. We wouldn't be paying subscription services for those open positions. You scale it based on the number of employees. So it gives us some cost controllability where if we went and bought new licenses for each computer and installed them, whether that computer's getting used or not, we paid for that license. As I said, this is a fundamental shift in how the IT market is. Scott's done a really good job in cost avoidance and cost offset, meaning what can replace what we have, and look down the road, what can we do to avoid foreseeable and necessary costs to replace that. And through this, he did a very extensive business plan, and except for the $100,000 one-time expenditure, he's got the cost avoidance and the mitigation, meaning removing other pieces of it, within $500. So the 365 implementation once in would equate to about a $500 increase when you bring in the cost avoidance and the mitigation. So increased recurring costs for security software, I touched on that. The other thing we have in IT to be aware of is things like our Blackbaud, our Kronos platform, which we're rolling out Kronos and it combines ADP. Presently, we pay for licenses for ADP and Kronos. All those things, our service, our internet fiber service with Lakeland, have all seen about 50% increases. So this is where you're beholden, and we can negotiate, but we're kind of beholden to what we have. Blackbaud, which is our financial packaging, from a desktop version to an online version. So it's about a 50% increase because they don't offer the desktop version. And we got to have security for our financial package. All those things start to creep up. $30,000 for Kronos, $9,000 for Blackbaud, $7,000 for internet service costs, the $50,000 for Dark Trace, which is the security software we paid for this year with the security, with the election security grant that was recurring. We've got creeping costs in IT. We're trying to really control them. We're looking at efficiencies. We're eliminating where we did have employees with laptops and desktops. We're eliminating the number of machines where you've got a laptop and a docking station, getting rid of a desktop. In the long term, that will relieve our hardware replacement costs. And we're looking at security patches and that kind of stuff so that we can make this a process that's a surviving process. We're also looking at over time virtualizing, going to some cloud-based systems to eliminate physical servers, which have to be refreshed on a capital plan and get costly every few years. But I wish I had another way to say it other than we haven't invested in IT. If we fail to invest in IT, it's going to be much more expensive down the road. It's going to be expensive now. it's going to be exponential if we continue to let
We currently run Office 365 within our own business, and it was a good investment. It's expensive, but it was a good investment.
The other thing Scott has done, and it was one of his main challenges when we interviewed him for the candidate we were looking for, IT has never had a well-comprised capital investment plan, capital replacement plan. Scott has laid out a very comprehensive 5-year level capital plan, but that runs about $230,000 in capital expenditures for this year, fund balance expenditures. But he's looked at cycling of servers, what he can virtualize over time, what those transitions would cost in order to pull down costs over time. But we challenged him with that. That's what we wanted from an IT director. So now we have to make the decision, do we now invest in what we stopped for?
Chad, can I answer, this is Mike Pritchard, can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
What would, going back before you get to the capital cost, what do you figure is the sort of the ongoing cost per employee of our IT system on an annual basis?
We've got it broken out by department for hardware replacement costs per employee. I can do that analysis, but off the top of my head, I don't have it.
No,
Mr. Pritchard.
no, I'm talking more about the 365 and the software and well, probably the whole ball of wax, so to speak. But what I'm wondering, are there for governmental entities, are there statistics out there on a per employee basis of the overall cost, and what is high, what is low, what is median, and so on?
We can do that analysis. I don't have it off the top of my head. I can tell you what the monthly cost for Microsoft is, and it's the Microsoft GCC platform, which is the government platform of Microsoft that we're looking at.
Do you have that number off the top of your head or not?
I'm looking at my breakdown right here, Mr. Pritchard. Let me find it because this is several pages long. Annual licensing cost overall is $156,000, but then per employee, I thought I had it in here. Hold on one second.
But okay.
I'm sorry, off the top of my head, I don't have the per employee.
Okay, I don't mean to put you on the spot there, but I was thinking it would be helpful to have some basis of comparison of saying that St. Croix County does it at so much per employee, and Ramsey County does it so much per employee, that sort of thing, or whatever statistics are out there, of WSA or whoever has that type of information.
For Microsoft Office specifically, I will tell you, I think the dollar of $13 per employee per month is sticking in my head, I think is about what it is. But that's just for the Office 365.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions on that? Departments with no significant changes, these are standalones: clerk of the courts, district attorney, corporation counsel, UW extension. Now, when I say no significant changes, once we factor in staffing plan and all that, there's slight variances, but they're not asking for any big changes.
So I got a question on UW extension. I was just looking at your sheet you got here, and I know it's a brand new thing that we've taken over on general government, and I know I've heard environmental services, they always kind of question the services they provide. And earlier, that's kind of who I was referencing when I was talking about the museum presentation. UW Extension showed up here last month and gave us a handout. I have no clue, besides 4-H. They don't give me any tangible things what they do. They've got this nice chart, all the stuff they say on it they do, all the community support. I get 4-H, I can see that, taxpayers see that, your kids get 4-H programs. What else do they do? And if I'm looking at this right, do we pay them?
Nope.
Can you tell me what we pay them on their budget a year?
We pay them, so we pay a contract rate for some of their staff. Let me pull up their specific sheet. We pay a contract rate for most of their staff, and we have one county employee that's assigned to UW. However, we're going to attempt, UW wants to do it as well, we're going to attempt to move that county employee over to a state employee where we just pay a flat contract rate per year for their services.
Our total budget, what does it cost us to have UW Extension?
We expend $258,000 on UW Extension.
How much of that is directed towards 4-H?
That we would have to, I'd have to get them to do a further breakout. Since just getting UW, it's going to take me a little time to wrap my head around it and meet with Kristen and really understand it.
I would like to know, because again, that I'd just like a better presentation, and I like tangibles of what they actually do for Polk County.
So you want to look at specific services offered, cost of services, and specific outcomes.
Not all that other stuff.
But specific.
Just show me here in Polk County, here's what I did for you, here's what I did for that 250 grand.
I will work on that. I will not commit to having that done
Could maybe help you
in
on
the
that?
next couple of weeks.
But I can tell you, 4-H is one of the smallest things they do.
That's my
And it's getting
point.
smaller all the time.
That's my point.
But,
What else do they do?
Well, but they,
Seems like they get a lot of money for a lot of nothing.
Here's an example. I can give you an example that I am aware of. So we've left the CDC.
That's my point. No one knows what they do.
no, no, I don't think that's accurate.
Oh, okay, then tell me what I'm missing.
Well, one, we have Don Wortham, who has done things for the
Okay, that
CJCC.
helps.
He
There
works
you go.
with families to develop, I mean, he goes out and works in the public to how do we get families to be self-sustainable and to overcome their issues and be successful. Kind of a touchy-feely thing from a university, right? But that's the kind of thing. Carrie is helping me with the orientation program that I'm trying to develop for the supervisors. They do work with ag, supporting our farmers and ag education. People come in and say, hey, I want to do.
That's the one thing I've heard Supervisor Olson say in environmental services. There's not a single ag guy out there in the business that would call UW Extension up anymore to ask them their opinion. That's him.
That's it. But yeah, and others would disagree. But then again, I do think ag is becoming a smaller percentage of what they do.
Sure.
Not that they're doing less, but they're doing more in community development. And when I was with the EDC, I worked with them on certain types of projects to say, what can you tell me about this industry? How can you help me?
Well, that's what I listen to. I mean, I get, and you think it's different. You're not a farmer. I listen to a farmer that says they bring zero value to a commercial farmer now, where you go to your folks you buy your products from, and they have experts and everything you need. And I've just heard this UW Extension over and over. I've heard a few good things. I've heard more things that say we spend a lot of money and we don't get a lot of bang for our buck. And I'm sure you've heard that too.
Well, I hear that from Mr. Olson and you. And
This is the first time I've ever said it, I believe.
well,
And we heard you.
It's never been in front of my committee.
but I will say that,
That's
I
fine.
can tell you
I get
anecdotally,
it.
when we have issues that come up and programs and projects, I think of two people for outside immediate service, and they're always quick to help me. It's the Regional Planning Commission and UW Extension.
Okay, so
And so when I look at them,
You like it.
I say, yeah, they are great support. Now, do I
$100,000
say,
a
is it
year?
worth this or what that? But I think they do provide a service in all the counties. And I realize there are other options for ag people. I mean, you have co-ops and other things, right? Yeah. Pardon?
Private consultants.
Yeah, private consultants.
And they're experts.
Yeah, and I when I first started in ADC, I thought W Extension, they're the 4-H people. That's what I thought. But then I discovered they're a whole lot more than that. So,
When I think of UW Extension, I think more of the assistance in economic development, like Vince says.
yeah.
I think to Chris's point, to have him give a 5-minute presentation, I think is reasonable.
Didn't we?
Yeah, but
We had to call him and say, stop your presentation.
Yeah, it's
He only
too
wants
long.
5 minutes.
Well, you know what? No, and let's be fair about that. Look at what we got presented. You tell me anyone that walked out there thinking, oh, I see exactly what they do for Polk County. I did not hear
Yeah.
one. I heard about all the people that were, and how they all answer up this 100 people on the list. I heard not one program that they do in Polk County. I never heard a thing she said that this is what let me show you. I put that bulletin board on the wall. Or your administrator called us last week and we helped him out on a serious issue. But I hear what you say, Don. I mean, Don does bring value. I can see what he's done with the CJC. Matt. Yeah. there's,
CAC goal setting.
Yeah, I see,
I
yeah.
think Carrie was involved in that, and granted, they're not.
And I didn't tie that back
allowed
to
come into
this. I don't even need a presentation. I just like a printout of what
Yeah.
they actually accomplish.
All right, I'll work on getting that pulled together.
Sorry to be so blunt, but.
I'll get that together for you. And I do need to, now that UW has been moved into my division for 2021, I do need to spend some time with Krista and really learn about them. Because I can't speak from a well-educated position right now. I just don't have that knowledge yet. All right, so what I did here is I did a FTE change. This is related to general government to kind of answer your question. You can see where current and then the shift with some notations here, and the allocation changes. So the net is going from 24.75 overall to include DOA, HR, IT, CJCC, clerk, treasurer, extension to 26 overall is what we're predicting, a net effect. And once I prepare the final, I will show you guys a net effect. I found some good examples I really like looking at other county budgets. I'll show you guys the net effect and notations for the county overall, because I know this is important. All right, so that ends that part. I want to share, make sure I'm sharing the right thing. These, and understand, these are working top sheets, but you go through here and you can see the actuals to the forecasts. Now understand that these top lines regarding revenue, no levy has been shifted from other departments, no levy's been added in for the levy calculation. And at this point, I'm still uncomfortable adjusting sales tax at all until I look at it further. So none of that's been added in. But where I think these are beneficial to you is to show you the direction we're thinking and show you what we see net effects are. And I gave you a number of these to look through. I thought this would be helpful to start looking through before we talk about the draft proposed budget in October and then get to the final budget to get you the direction we're going. Mr. Nelson, CJCC. So here's an example of the difference with CJCC. First of all, budgeted last year was this $40,000 one-time donation from the 501c3. That was never guaranteed. It was put in the budget, but never guaranteed by the 501c3. Now, I did work with the 501c3 last year to get $13,000 for the jail bathroom so we could move testing, to spend about $4,000 on technology for the jail programs, that kind of stuff. So that was a line that never appeared, so that became levy dollars. This is where the TAG grant projected revenue was last year. This is where we're at this year. I think that the staff has done a tremendous job increasing that grant award. The public charges for service, you see what the actuals were, where the budget was. I'm very conservative on my numbers. Really, we're probably going to come in about 30,000, but I believe in conservatism, so I'm putting that at 27. So that's helped support them, and that's real dollars appearing. I'm basing the CJCC budget on real dollars. So you see here that based on what they were projecting, this was going to be the levy draw for 2020. That's including the 40,000 that never materialized. In reality, we were looking at upwards of 100,000. to go to the UW extension point, we're now reduced that by about 50,000 because we've left that coordinator position open, and Don has shifted his work. He had capacity due to COVID, and has helped significantly as we rebuilt the program. So that's brought that down. Right now, next year, you're seeing about a $34,000 draw. That's without adjustments for salaries in there and the allocation of mine. So that's why I'm predicting about 40,000. And there is potential that between now and then some new money could appear, but I'm not promising there's new money. I anticipated we'll have a $40,000 draw next year. When you look to these sheets, you'll notice when we do these forecasts for the staffing, when you see these slide allocations, that's how I've allocated the divisional across. It's just moving them and spreading them out. And I'm not going to go through each of these. I just wanted to give you examples as you look through them, how to evaluate them. The professional services, here's an example. It's under contractual, but you see how the clerk cycles because of election years. So this is where the levy reduction is, because here we're in a presidential election, here we're in an off year, here we were in an off year. So I still gave some safety room in the projected numbers, but it is a cyclical impact on the revenue cycle. And I think there was one other thing I wanted to point out to you on these as you evaluate these. Was IT? Okay, here we go. So Scott has done an excellent job of really defining where IT lacks, where IT needs to be, and how we can achieve this. And he's gone into great detail on his overviews and stuff. And then you'll get the full one in the package. But you see the significant shift in cost for IT. And this is where the investment, if we really want to make IT sustainable, this is where the investment comes in. And you can see that these big shifts in cost, we spent money here, but you see a significant rise and estimated for the next couple of years. And we've been over that, but that's a big part. Now, part of that will be fund balance because part of that is his 5-year cycle plan. But part of that is the software costs I was talking about, which are continuing operating costs. These are, what you've got is, this is the building's 5-year capital budget, and I wonder if Mo will speak to this one, please.
Sure. Actually, with the capital budget, which is always outside our budget, it's always additional funding request. Myself and Rod has went together on putting together a 5-year plan, not including the building remodel of this. This is for other items on there. Keeping down our expenditures is what we can and what's needed in each department. Couple of things to note: the AEDs for $12,000. Those are outdated and we can't get parts for them anymore, so we need to update our AEDs. It should be able to update all of them with adding a couple more of those also. The courtroom audio visual is $75,000. That was a project that was talked about earlier on in the year for courtroom number 3, I believe it is. With that, including AED lighting. The old schoolhouse repairs and repaint. That was, when you see it next time, that'll be moved under the museum budget. That's the little white schoolhouse and next to the post office in the lake. For cleaning on those. The jail laundry equipment was a carryover from last year that didn't get funded. That still needs replacing. The Sallyport doors again, and Justice Center LED light upgrade to start bringing those in there. Those are some of the building things for next year. Programming some of these out there. As we go into 2022, this will change with the building remodel. As you see, the government center chiller boilers in there and stuff. not having that project on board yet, we still have those programmed into the system as we move forward. With that, the only other item for the museum was the removal of that block wall in front of the museum, the concrete to lower that and slope that back to what it was originally, so it's safer for the public and someone couldn't fall off that wall. That's kind of our main thing right now. Again, these capital projects are outside of our normal budget, so they're additional requests.
So no, just looking at this, 2021, you're proposing to buy a plow truck for the recycling center for 45 grand.
Yes, sir, that's I forgot that one. That's the 1-ton that's currently down there. That's a 2002 truck that was a hand-me-down from other departments that is costing us a lot in maintenance and rusting. It is used for not only plowing the recycling center out during a storm, also for hauling things back and forth from recycling and other things. Do that in there as a bare minimum because that is starting to cost us a lot of maintenance dollars trying to keep that truck together at that point.
The only reason I kind of looking at that stuff, and then I see a couple years out, and not that we need to get down in the weeds on, your cost or why clean pickup in a couple more years out. Then you got a recycling forklift, then you got skid steer to buy. And then I don't know what you got proposed for building costs on that, but even as of 3-4 years ago, we were talking with the last person that was running that building about the money that kept getting spent on the recycling center, when the county board has been asking for us to really evaluate the need for this facility. And we were spending money on a new roof, we're spending money on garage doors, we're spending on money all the time down there, and we're losing money on this. From, I believe we're between state funding, so it's taxpayers' dollars, and county general fund money. We've been losing anywhere from $100,000 to $300,000 a year sometimes, if I'm correct on that statement. And yet we still seem to be going down the road when I think our county board has been asking, hey, let's take a pause on this, and are we going to get a handle on this? And we're forecasting spending, still putting a lot of investment into this, and I'm just wondering when is and we had a resolution on this, and I'm just wondering when's the time are we going to stop throwing money at a program that doesn't work in a building?
I can ask to that. Right now, just looking at year 2021, the other years are just a projection out there. The reason I put in that, I mean, we're still working on the program and identifying the recycling program and how we can enhance it, waiting on some stuff back from the private haulers on what that looked like and what that would cost the county or save the county. I threw in the 1-ton plow truck as an item that would not be lost in this scenario. If we chose to get rid of the recycling department next year, it's an asset that we could be purchased by another department in the division.
But why
It's to be utilized.
But why can't, I mean, you guys plow snow for a living with your big trucks. You got a salt shed there. And I know those trucks are probably too big to get into the little inners and outs, but why couldn't we just kick that $45,000 down till 2022 and let's see what really happens there? If another department needs to buy a truck, let them ask for buying a truck and justify it. I have a hard time personally, just me, spending any money on the recycling center until this analysis is done, and even investing in a pickup truck. To me, I'll have a hard time supporting that. I just want to just give you that heads up. That was all.
No, just as a question, our county trucks do make passes through there as they try to get salt and stuff, but don't have the time to sit there and plow the parking lot out of there. With that, and unfortunately, there's been nothing purchased down there, so this truck is in very much disrepair.
Can't limp it one more year?
at a cost here, we can always limp it back along the way.
I know, but you got 45 grand there to plow snow. That just seems like a lot of money next year to plow snow. You could hire a local guy in St. Croix Falls if you wanted to be outsourcing. You could hire a local guy for probably 50, 100, 200 bucks a time to plow the snow this year. You know, there's all kinds of local people. You hire a local guy to fix your roof up on the museum. You can hire a local guy to plow the snow this year and just hold off on the 45 grand for 1 year just to see what happens. That'd be a request I would have,
Sure, we can do that.
but you know, I'm just one person, so.
Got a contract right across the street.
That's all I had on that.
All right. As a side note, real quick, I just got a text. Mr. Pritchard, to answer your question regarding the cost of IT per employee, it's $1,320 per year.
320,
1,320.
1,320 per employee.
1,320, yes, sir.
And if you would be able to look at if there are any sort of studies of comparables in government entities particularly, but you know, generally that'd be helpful.
I will work on that. Mo, did you want to talk about this, the fair and museum at all?
The fair, the museum had the two projects, actually the 9,000 for the schoolhouse and also there that's in the upper section. They'll be moved down. And then $8,000 for that wall in front of the museum. I already spoke on that.
A total of 17,000.
What was that? That's money you're going to be spending at the fair this year? Next year, excuse me?
The fair, we did not have any additional funding
That
at
was
this
museum you're
time.
talking
We were currently looking at replacing the roof on the admin building this year, but that is currently on hold right now.
On that museum wall, I've had a few people ask me about that. Have you been in any discussion about the parking issue in front of the museum about, and I know that's a state highway, about moving the wall back enough so they could put some diagonal parking in front of that building there?
No one's been in contact with me on that.
Would you, before this project gets further in this museum wall, would you reach out to the village and to the historical society? Because I've heard some talk about even just Main Street, there's I don't know, you know when it's coming, when they're going to be redoing 46 from 8 all the way up through there. I'd heard it from the village, one of the village guys, and they're talking about sidewalks and striping and things. And I know that's been a topic around on Main Street on that wall and the sidewalk, that it might be a nice enhancement to the community.
Are you aware of a construction coming through?
Reconstructing Main Street, no. I've heard of no project.
46 in like 2022 or 2024 or something like that.
Nothing I've heard on the schedules.
The village said that there was someone proposing something in the village, and they said, well, they're going to be redoing 46 through Balsam Lake. The state was in 2024 or something. And but
The only one that's been on there has been a pavement replacement that I've seen is just a mill and fill.
that's that. Okay.
That was it, yeah. But I'll make contact.
That's
and
an
see if there's a
interesting
project.
concept, if we're taking that wall down.
The idea was is that, you know,
Increase
some of the
parking.
communities around and some of the Main Street programs that maybe the village would work with the county, then that it might be a project that might change something on Main Street. You know, people always talk is whether everyone's talking together or not. I don't know if anyone's ever said anything to you about it.
No,
Okay.
many times the community will work with the state especially on a shared cost of a downtown upgrade if there's a construction project. So the funding's there for that. If it's, especially for a safety project for parking, if it's too narrow to get things out in that.
Sure.
So I can reach out to WisDOT and see if there's anything waiting in the queue or if anyone has been contacted.
I just like before we would fund replacing that wall, I don't want to approve funding that wall until I know everyone has shake through what other people are talking about there.
And this was removing that wall due to the height with no safety fence on
And
it.
when you remove it, what do you do? Just slope the dirt back?
Just slope the dirt back like it sits on the north side. of
Oh,
the
okay.
building.
You're not going to replace the wall.
No, no, sir.
But sure, I think it would help with the project if the county said, hey, we have $8,000 to do this project, we would throw into it, and it turned out to be a little bit bigger project. This might work better.
Okay, I'll follow up with that.
If it's even if it's possible and they'll allow it.
The next thing on your screen is the capital budget I spoke to regarding IT that Scott has worked really hard on. One thing you'll notice is he's done a good job balancing the median annual expenditure on this. A lot of this stuff is the refreshing and replacement of stuff we talked about. We're going to constantly evaluate if we can avoid doing this through virtualization or other means. A couple big things to point out. The professional service lines you'll see here. We are looking at how can we balance having personnel in-house versus using contractual people to help implement these projects and changes. So when you see professional services, that's where that is. You know, what IT projects are more one-off that we can avoid increasing staff count so that we use contractors instead of staff. There are some big ones in there looking ahead, not this year, but ahead. The 100,000 this year, by the way, is the Microsoft Office. Like next year, we're evaluating cloud hosting platforms. That's for two reasons. Number one, we hope we can eliminate servers. Number two, one of the serious deficiencies identified in our security audit is we have no true backup to our servers. We've got the Justice Center and Government Center. I'll give you an example of the tornadoes. What if a tornado came through and hit both? All our data is gone. Ideally, you have a third remote physical location. That's very, very expensive. So we're looking at hosted government solutions for the cloud-based backup and redundancies in our servers. So, and we think we can harness that to eliminate some more physical servers and really, increase our security and reduce our physical hardware, which will save us cost. But this is one of his big tasks, and when he really came through on was giving us a good IT picture of what it's going to take. Any questions on that one? All right. Then moving on, Mr. Chair, that completes 11 and 13.
Should we take a 5-minute break before we get some more information?
How much longer will we be here today, you think?
I don't think the master fee schedule will take long at all.
Okay.
All right, let's just take a 5 to stretch and then.
We're back on, sir.
All right, we'll have a review and a recommendation of the master fee schedule.
So the fees, I broke your packet into kind of the divisional. As you know, these fees run through each of the committees, with the exception of the general government fees, which run through this committee. So public health, CSD, those have all been screened by their committees, but you all approved the overall schedule. And some things to know, Golden Age Manor sets theirs based on competition, tries to stay below competition. This year, Environmental Services approved a couple fee increases in a couple areas within theirs. Several of the fees are statutorily set, as in Register of Deeds, Treasurer, things like that. Those don't get adjusted. Some are set, such as the Sheriff's Office fees for records and things like that by Attorney General's opinion. And then there's some where there's some discretion on the board. For general government, the treasurer, there are no changes in fees.
What page are you on right now? Through all of these pretty quick.
Go to treasurer, sir.
There's nothing really on any of them that's changed, what you're saying.
Right, I'm going to touch on the ones that have,
Oh.
but then I was going to go to the general government specific, which this board has to look at our specific. So I'm on the treasurer now.
But we have to prove these fees that these other agencies.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I'll touch on any changes I noted when I was. I wanted to kind of go through general government and then touch on any other changes I saw. So treasurer remains static. Hers are either set by the Attorney General's opinions or by statute. One thing to note about treasurer is if 2021 is an economic downturn, you could see increased revenues in both treasurer and register of deeds because as foreclosures happen and things like that, their fees go up. Same token, they can go up if we really have a building boom. So those fluctuate with the economy substantially. Criminal justice, these fees I'm leaving the same for this year as we revamp the program. I anticipate in 2022, I'll do a full market study once we've really got the program up and running. The idea will be to optimize fees to make between fees and grants, make CJCC self-sufficient. Every CJCC is a little different, we're finding. And so now that we've found our identity through our new business plan, we can find our identity with our fees and that kind of stuff as well. UW Extension has some very minor, no changes in those. County clerk, again, almost all her fees are.
Over UW Extension.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. UW Extension.
Obviously, you know that's my favorite topic today.
So they generate very little in fees.
That's what I wanted to hear you say.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, that's it.
Okay. As long as I know what you want, I can
That's
give
all
it
I
to you.
wanted.
All right.
That you identified that.
Oh, where
Sorry.
was I? Okay, now I'm back on track. All right. County clerk, many of her fees are set by statute or by guidance. She has a number of fee areas, passports, marriage license, dog tags, those kind of things. DMV is now zero because we eliminated those services. I didn't notice anything really outstanding on those whatsoever, any alterations. Mo, are there any highway fees that you want to touch on with specific changes?
No change in the highway.
I thought, but you have a lot of behind the scenes working. Lime, Mo evaluates the market for both lime and recycling when he evaluates fees and charges, and tries to keep with the business cycle on those. any significant thing with lime mill?
No, just an increase in egg line prices currently. Just increase at the start of the year, increase halfway through the year for right now. And then the outcome of the quarry.
Recycling, I'll let Mo touch on any further detail beyond this, but the one major change, and it's also in the resolution, is they're enacting a commercial hauler tipping fee, the charge for commercial haulers bringing recycling materials, to adjust revenue. Also, you guys, it's in the resolution specifically because when we enact a new fee, it has to be identified in the resolution. Mo, is there anything else you want to touch on there?
No, and the recycling fee is $70 per ton for commercial dumping. That's a fee also that'll be interdepartment charged as the recycling picks up cardboard waste from the highway department and recycling from the facilities department. The other ones, we look at market and the industry on setting some of those fees and what it's costing us to get rid of those products to our vendors. So that's an ongoing process right now. We do have a phone call next Wednesday with a new paper mill in South Dakota that is new to the market. So we're going to see what those prices are also. Getting rid of our product.
For example, like Waterman brings you a load of recycle, you're going to charge them now a fee where currently you do not.
Correct.
And that fee will be by the ton.
By the ton.
So
We should raise a revenue of approximately $75,000 to $85,000 with that fee.
you told everyone you're going to be doing that, or are you going to just said we got to wait for the resolution?
We'll wait for the resolution.
Oh, yeah, it's not passed.
When it passes, we'll get word out to our commercial haulers that the deal will be starting on January 1.
Sure. Is that consistent with other recycling centers?
Depending on the recycling centers, the fees range anywhere from that $65 range, $50 to $110 to $150, depending on where the place is located. I think Baldwin's at around 110 or 150 right now.
So we're in check anyway.
We're in check. It's our starting point with that.
Parks, I noted no significant difference in their fees. Law enforcement, no changes to their fee schedule. I overhauled the fees in last year's budget to come in line with state statute, and where we were allowed to increase fees for service of papers and that kind of stuff to keep up with personnel costs related to that, we did. But this is a highly regulated one where either the Attorney General or the statute sets what fees we can charge. So there was an additional, and we saw the benefit of that this year on revenues collected. Again, this one is really dependent on a poor economy. A poor economy, the sheriff's fees go up exponentially. So I'm using baseline modeling for their fee collections because we don't know what it's going to do. And actually, COVID has hurt their revenues pretty badly this year because of the suspension of civil proceedings, evictions, foreclosures, that kind of stuff, sheriff sales. Attorney, no change in fees. Again, most are set by statute.
That's the same reason their fees went from 21,000 to 87 this year because of COVID.
Yeah, so they have the same type of thing. So we've got these DOC fees where you get from the prisons, the sheriff's office gets it too. For example, the sheriff's office gets a fee per day per state border, and you get that check at the end of the year. Last year they had reduced it by about 500 bed days because they changed the criteria of what they would pay for, which resulted in about a $20,000 cut. Normally that was around 150,000. It was about 130 last year. When the sheriff's office gets their reimbursement in October, November, it'll be less than last year because there's been less people confined on state charges. Same with the DA's office, less cases going to court or less DOC involvement, less activity, their revenue is cycled on that. So COVID has had an impact on the revenue cycle for the court-related fees. Clerk of the court filing fees, these are established by statute, and no control over that is what the statute tells us that their fees are. And there's several pages of those. She tries to capture copies and that kind of stuff in accordance with the Attorney General's opinion. I did note community service has a lot of very complex fees, but Tanya's done, she didn't make any significant changes this year. Last year, she did a full evaluation and overhaul, things like nursing services provided to the schools. She put in line with what our actual cost is, contracted service rates, speech pathology, that kind of stuff. We did a good market study. So if there's any other further questions, I'll try to answer them. If not, I would recommend that the board adopt the fee schedule.
Make a motion to adopt.
Second.
Are we adopting it or are we just moving it on to the county board?
Or recommending it to the county board. I apologize.
I'm making it with a recommendation to the county board.
And I'll second.
With the, yeah, because it's just the fees. That's what all we're doing, right?
No, Resolution 3820. It's to adopt the master fee schedule, but I think through committee, we're only moving it with a recommendation to the county board.
Operating capital budget recommendations, it says. So I guess I'm not recommending the capital budget right now. I'm just recommending the fee.
3820.
Mr. Chair, I'll move the approval of the, Pritchard, I'll move the approval of Resolution 3820.
You got it, Chris? You got the resolution?
3820.
Yeah, that's what we're,
So
that's
30
the fees.
So 3820, it says on line 21. Oh, it's just for budget recommendation. You're using the fees, so we're not actually making a capital budget recommendation, right?
No, sir, this just incorporates it into the process.
Okay. All right, I'm clear.
I think Supervisor Pritchard, we actually already have a motion and a second to move it with a recommendation to the full county board. Was there any more discussion? If not, all those in favor? Aye. All carries. All right, how about subject matters? Actually, we already have our next agenda, I think is already out, isn't it? Okay, yeah. So we have unless someone has something new they'd like on there.
Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Mike.
I had, I'm just looking at the Polk County Economic Development Corporation about broadband. That was one item.
And that's on our next agenda.
Will we have a further review of the general division draft budget for consideration or recommendation for the general government division?
You'll get the overall draft for the county, which will include those as well.
At our next meeting.
It's the goal.
Mike, the goal is that be ready for our next meeting.
It will be ready or will not?
That's the goal. The goal is that it's ready, but it's a lot to put together.
And then we got review of outside funding of outside agencies or recommendation.
That was already in
Are you, Mike, looking at the old agenda and trying to bring some of that stuff forward?
Well, I checked these off on the matters we discussed today, but we did not act on. And I'm presuming, would we act on them at our October 8th meeting?
Can I step in here, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman? So, Mr. Pritchard, the way it will work is, the goal is to have the draft administrator's budget on October 8th for your guys' initial review. And typically, I think there's another meeting usually between there and the county board meeting if need be to go over it again. But you look at the overall, all those areas as well as all the other areas of the county budget. You look at the draft overall, which incorporates those areas.
Okay, incorporates those areas we talked about this morning.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
But
Then I had the two others. One, we had that library planning services committee, and would they be available to make a report at our October 8th meeting?
I don't know. I haven't talked to the library. I have no idea.
I would think in the same category of hearing from the museum that we should hear from the library.
Who would bring them?
Well, there's
Who would bring them to us?
there's a Polk County Library Advisory Committee or representatives of it, of the 10 libraries in Polk County. I presume they would be available to do that.
Mr. Chair, could I make a suggestion? Maybe we should go ahead and schedule a second.
And I had understood that we would have further addressing the fairgrounds matters.
That's on our executive committee agenda.
I don't know if it is or not for October.
It is. And the library, I don't believe they've requested any additional funding that I'm aware of.
Well, I'd like to touch base to see where that stands. As you may recall, in our 5-year plan, we had under Act 150 the goal of going to 100% funding under Act 150, and we was it 2 years ago now, we went to 90% funding, and I don't think we took any action last year.
I just agree with Mike. I would like to see that on the agenda of whatever committee would be appropriate. If it's general government, the reimbursement rate that goes back to the local libraries from the county, I believe is currently at 90%, and I would like to have some discussion on that as well.
Yes, it is at 90%, and the plan, the 5-year plan, the goal for the 5-year plan was to get to 100%.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about that.
All right, well, I don't know how we would set that up or line it up, but anyone have an idea how that?
I would just suggest if we want to have special president.
I am the county liaison with the Indian Head Federated Library System, and if you need a supervisor to set that up, I'd be happy to take that obligation to do that, to see if there's someone of the 10 county libraries that would be willing to make a short presentation to us at our October 8th meeting.
Go for it, Mike.
We have time to do it all. That's the problem, is it's the chair's call, but, you know, how much can you put on?
Well, I don't feel time is an issue. Is there someone on this committee that's not aware of what's going on with the library and wanting to go to 100%? Everyone's aware of it. Didn't it come in like a resolution to county board? I don't think, Mike, that they need to come here and try to convince 5 people. They need to like present to county board. It needs to come as a resolution, and
They would have already done that if they were trying to look for that funding this year. They wouldn't have waited till now because we approved a resolution a year ago, and we had the library people in here, and we approved that funding,
I think it was 2 years ago, actually, no.
or whatever it was, but yeah, I agree with Russ, I don't need another.
I don't need a presentation.
And I don't either.
If someone wants to bring it as part of the budget packet, it'll go to the board and the board will make the decision.
Yes.
So
What would be the deadline for doing that?
For bringing something to the board? What would the deadline be?
If someone wants to make present a resolution on the library funding issue, when and who has to have that by what date?
I guess the question would be, and we'll need to consult Malia on this, and she's tied up in court. But the question would be, is the existing resolution sufficient? So is the direction of the board that it should be incorporated into the budget? So there's.
I'm gonna call a point of order on this, because now we're talking about a resolution for funding. It's not on our agenda to take action or nothing. I believe this should be discussed outside of this committee.
We shouldn't be holding the discussion.
No,
What we're
we can't
actually on
talk
is
about it.
subject matters.
I raised this as whether it should be on the October 8th agenda, which was identify subject matters for next meeting.
Right, but you're talking about drafting a resolution now. That's out of bounds.
Well, I think you're being a little restrictive.
No,
Well,
I'm not. I'm not the chair, so.
I think, Mike, if you wanna draft a resolution from the library and present it at the next general government meeting, I think that would be appropriate, then we can discuss it.
Yep.
But I don't feel you need to bring a presentation, not to this committee. I guess it's up to you if you do, but
Well, I
If someone doesn't
my
understand.
procedure would be to approach some of the library, their advisory committee, and see if that's
Now-
something they want to do.
if
So,
you have something, Mike, just, maybe let Lisa know and she'll get it on our agenda.
thank you.
You have something else you want?
No, that was it. We mentioned the fairgrounds, right?
Is fairgrounds on our agenda?
On executive.
On
I
executive?
believe it is on general government as well. I just went through, I have the draft.
What do you got?
The fair is also going to the county board for committee of the whole in October, I believe.
Did you catch that, Mike?
And then also,
Well, I heard it was on the executive committee agenda for is it October 8th meeting? I think it should be on our agenda as well.
It is on that agenda and it's also on county board for committee of the whole. So it should get a good,
I'm talking about the general government committee agenda for October 8th.
it's on that one too. On all three of them.
Okay, thank you.
Any,
you still wanted a tour of the facility for the facilities project, correct? Of this building? You wanted a tour of items that need
We talked
replacement?
about the importance of, before moving forward, that people here see kind of what we're talking about. So we could do a quick tour of the mechanical rooms, where we've got the issues. And it just, I think, helps give a vision of what's needed.
that's for general government? Did they do that when we were on a break or?
Well, was it just general government that's gonna do that? Because here's what I've been hearing is that, for upcoming matters, and I personally don't think it should be a general government issue, because I feel like it's, I think you gotta sell the whole board on this construction project, not us, just a few supervisors, because I wouldn't make a recommendation.
We would only get in the financing part of it if they tell us it's a goal.
Yes.
So if we
Maybe
can,
the whole, maybe.
can we, as we develop this, whatever it's gonna be, a day, half day, whatever
Oh, yeah, yeah.
orientation,
That'd be a good
and
thing.
we'll have to schedule a separate day in October. And then our thought, it's coming back to me, our thought was we could do kind of an introduction to the divisions as to what their functions are, main tasks, and so on. We could talk about, again, the government structure, what, why, and then maybe include a tour of that. And that would be a relatively quick half hour.
Half hour, something like that.
Yeah.
Depends how many questions there are.
So if we do it on a separate day, we'll have time for that.
I just remember years ago when there was a big construction project here, you know, everyone kind of got to walk through the building, poke your head in a couple spaces, and then you walked around the building, you saw the parking lot. Everyone kind of got to see what it was.
Okay.
It's helpful then to just see the pictures on the wall.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I've been in the mechanic room. I know what it looks like, but Fran's probably never been down there. Before you have to spend a couple $1 million.
I've never been in most of the departments here.
Yeah,
Pretty
right.
much been to the treasurer, register deeds, clerk.
Right.
Parks I've been to.
Not that it's on general government, but it may have did it come out of this committee or executive, the orientation, is
Yeah.
that still moving forward?
Yeah, we're putting that together. WCA is not available, but we're going to try and put something else together that will be helpful. It's in development right now.
All right, any other subject matters for the October 8th meeting?
I have a procedural question, but I'll email it to Vincent.
I guess just more updates on the recycling center. Are we really, are we gonna keep fixing the building up, keep putting money into it? Or are we gonna, at some point, what's the trigger? I keep asking and just so you know, it just feels like, kind of maybe really no one really wants to get rid of it. Staff. That staff is like kind of dragging their feet.
Staff is gathering the information that you requested. We just don't have it back yet.
Okay.
And once we have that presentation on that, I think it'd be valuable to know what the board's direction is so that we're not just
Listen to one guy.
always giving information out, but not having direction if we're gonna.
You've given me enough information. I already tried to propose a resolution to shut it down. So I've already made my call on that.
Well, we're just waiting on that last bit of data to get you that information you wanted on what would it look like with a private hauler hauling our bins, or if we got rid of our bins. So you'll have that last piece of information with that.
It's just so hard to keep funding something that's just falling apart. And it's like, you either got to fix it up and spend the money on it, or you got to quit, like putting Band-Aids on it.
And on our October 8th, all right, why don't we discuss that then?
Okay, sorry, Chair.
All right, any other subject matters for the next meeting? If not,
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. We'll stand adjourned at 11. As your computer says, 11:16.